Welcome to This Is My Architecture. My name is Raul, and today we have Michael from Fender. Hey, Michael. Can you talk to us a little bit about Fender?
Sure. We have our flagship product is Fender Play, which is a digital learning application for users to learn to play guitar.
That sounds so exciting. I'm a guitar player too. So how are you guys using the cloud? What are you sharing with us today?
So this is an overview of our architecture for lesson data for users to retrieve lessons and so they can learn to play. So first of all, we need to get that lesson data into the system. So admin users will upload lesson data through API Gateway and into a custom authorizer. And this custom authorizer will then call out to our EC2 authentication service and validate that this user has the privileges to be able to manage lesson metadata. If they have the right privileges, then the lesson management function is invoked, and then the data is then written to DynamoDB.
So this all makes sense, and you're actually running almost all of this serverless, EC2 being the only component being non-serverless that you guys are managing right now. Are you guys handling reliability here, or how do you make sure that this is highly available?
Yes, we have multiple instances as well as auto-scaling should we receive a burst of traffic.
Awesome. Okay. So talk to me about how the students, how this information gets now delivered to students.
Sure. So for students who retrieve this information, we're pulling out of Elasticsearch, but we've got to get it in there first. So when the data is updated in DynamoDB, it invokes a Lambda function off the DynamoDB table stream, which then updates the data into an Elasticsearch cluster. So a request from a user then comes up in through API Gateway and into a custom authorizer that verifies the user has a valid Fender Play subscription. If their subscription is valid, and again, this authorizer works against the EC2 instance much like the other authorizer does. If the user subscription is valid, it will invoke the get lesson data, and they can also do full text searches and pull that lesson data out of Elasticsearch and then return back to the user.
So once that data sends back to the user, how do you actually deliver the videos themselves of the lessons?
Sure, that lesson metadata that comes back has the information on where to retrieve that audio and video assets for the lessons. And those are retrieved from CloudFront, which sits in front of an S3 bucket.
Talk to me a little bit about the scale of this architecture. How many users or how many requests do you get per day or per second?
Sure, we have on average all of the Lambda functions of about 40 invocations per second.
And what about on the data itself? Number of files or size of your S3?
We have terabytes of data in S3, including the raw footage that was shot for all the lessons.
Awesome. And about the Lambda functions, which is really interesting, how are you guys using, which language are you using for your Lambda functions?
We're using Go in our Lambda functions, and we've been using Go for over a year, even before the native Go support that was announced earlier this year. We're using a framework called Apex, which provides a Node.js shim around the Lambda binary.
Oh, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. How are you doing any local testing or local development on your teams?
Our engineers have access to a specific AWS account for a sandbox where they can deploy functions directly from the command line with Apex into the sandbox and test and provide proof of concepts and mocks so we can get going while our DevOps engineers set up the full deployment pipeline and provision resources using Terraform.
And what about the updating this Lambda functions? How are your teams doing that?
We use CircleCI as our CI provider, and within those deployment scripts, we use the AWS command line to deploy the function code into pre-provisioned functions.
That makes total sense. So now with seeing this, which is a very modern architecture and running in serverless, what is the next stage for you guys? What are you guys looking for the future development?
Well, our next stage is basically getting rid of this EC2 instance authentication service. We're looking at possibly migrating our own to serverless or using AWS Cognito or something else. Additionally, we're going to be fully embracing the native Go support this year. And our big goal for the year is multi-region, having all this application in both regions using DynamoDB global tables.
So Michael, thank you for sharing all this exciting information. I love this architecture. And thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. This is My Architecture.